Now, from rolling blackouts, a sluggish economy, to rising unemployment and struggling state-owned entities, South Africa is seemingly on the edge. But is there a silver lining? Can the right interventions turn our economy around? For more on this, I'm joined by Richard Quest, a veteran journalist in CNN and host of Quest Mean Business at CNN. Thank you so much for your time, Richard. I must say I'm very jealous of your background and where you are. It seems like you're having a great time here in South Africa. But I want to speak about your experience here. You've been here a couple of times, and perhaps just tell us what's gotten worse and what's gotten better in your experience.
I don't think it can be put as straightforwardly. First of all, it's delightful to be here. Where I'm filming on Camps Bay at the main beach, and we've just come to the end of our filming. I know I can hear you saying, "Nice work if you can get it." But the truth is that when you talk, look, I've been coming to this country for a long time, and when you talk about what's got worse and what's got better, it's not as easy or as bilateral and linear as that, because there's a lot of things that have got better in the sense that the level of poverty, the number of people working, the nature of work, all these sort of things have improved. However, of course, pandemic and what happened during pandemic set a lot of policies back. What I think is different and what needs to be examined, and I know this is somewhat difficult for people here, is this question of load shedding and the power supply, because so much hinges upon it. And when the central bank, the Reserve Bank, says that over 900 million ZAR a day are being lost, 2% up to 2% of GDP, that is a serious number. And it is a number that will have a medium to long-term effect, Heidi, because eventually that is lost production, it is lost investment, it is lost to the economy.
I want to actually go back to what you said about load shedding, and we actually here on eNCA call it rolling blackouts, because that's what it is. South Africans are subjected to hours on end of no electricity, inconsistent and unreliable electricity. I do believe that you had to familiarize yourself with an app that's now called Eskom Push, and you had to figure out when you will be load shed. How important is it for our president to find a solution to the ongoing energy crisis? We've heard now that he will be appointing a minister of electricity. Do you think that is a solution?
No, of course it's not. This has not happened overnight. When I first started coming here, I don't know, 15 years ago, people were saying then there was definite forecasts that there would be electricity shortages. And the number of blackouts, and I'm glad you said that, load shedding is giving power cuts a nice cutesy little name, a cutesy little title. People can giggle about load shedding. It's not. It's a power cut, a rolling blackout. And most G20 countries, in fact, I can't think of any G20 country that actually has systemic rolling blackouts on a regular basis, and will have to have them for the foreseeable future. Now, of course, Heidi, there are other countries that have blackouts. The UK has them when there's something wrong with the power supply, but I don't know any other advanced countries that have them as part of the systemic everyday life. And one other point to keep going on this, they are going to last for a lot longer, because the amount of electricity that is being generated simply isn't enough. And they've known about that for some years and have not done anything about it.
Yes, I mean, if we put this into context, it's almost 16 years since the term load shedding was introduced. And it's almost as though South Africans have had to just accept the reality of inconsistent power supply.
Right.
Do you think our politicians and our current government are capable of taking us out of this dark tunnel that we've been in for 16 years?
That is a question that I would not answer. It would involve me getting into the party politics of it, which I studiously avoid doing. But I'll give you the answer that I would give you if I was broadcasting on CNN. Because I'm always very careful that I don't appear to criticize when I'm in somebody else's house. You don't want to be criticizing the wallpaper and the lampshades. However, if I was on CNN and you were Eleni Jatos asking me the question, Richard, what do I make about X, Y, Z? I would say this. The reality is the party in power has been in power for 25 years plus. There is no one else. It cannot turn around and say, well, it was the other lot. Well, it was the typical Tory or Labour, Republican or Democrat response. Well, we weren't in power when that happened. Nothing to look at here, Governor. We weren't to blame. They can't do it because they were the ones who were in power when this happened. And therefore, I think that that's the hard part that they have to negotiate in terms of what they say. They were the ones who actually were in and still are in power.
Let's move over to another very important topic. On the 24th of February, there's going to be a decision that's going to be made about whether or not South Africa will be grey listed. And indications are that we will most likely be grey listed. The government has known about this, and only just recently policies have been put in place to try and persuade for us not to be grey listed. Is this going to be detrimental for the South African government if we are grey listed at the end of Feb?
Any form of listing, any form of slight is detrimental in some shape or form. I think you talk about the later February date, but, let's just take this current policy on Russia. Now, again, I'm not going to say what's right or wrong. That's not my job. But I can tell you from outside looking in that there'll be a consequence to pay because the countries, the government here may say they want to be friends with all. And the government here may say that, historically the relationship between the ANC, however, respecting sovereignty. That's what one ANC person said to me. We are in favor of respecting sovereignty. And yes, but what happens when that sovereignty is under threat? And if Zelensky loses and there isn't the international support, then all your protestations of protecting sovereignty are really hollow. And that's the issue that I think that this government is going to face in the future. The rest of the world, call it the Western Alliance, if you will, are not going to forget. They are going to question the reliability of South Africa when push comes to shove on major issues like this. Now, again, Heidi, I'm not saying what the policy should be. That's for others living in this country. I'm merely saying, be aware that there will be a consequence. And I'm not sure that's been made as clear as perhaps it might have been.
Let's speak about the cabinet reshuffle that's imminent. It's going to include a Minister of Electricity, and many experts and critics are saying,
look,
President...
let's just talk about this. A Minister of Electricity for a crisis that's been going a couple of years. Now, it begs the question, why hasn't there been a Minister of Electricity before? What power will that Minister of Electricity have? Is he answerable only to the President? Does he have, or she, have budgetary expenditure powers? What are they going to be able to do about a problem that everybody regards as systemic? South Africa didn't get into this mess overnight. So, fine, have your Minister of Electricity. Define the powers that person will be able to use, but do not use it as a panacea for what is otherwise a very real issue.
I want us to quickly move over and speak about global matters here. We do know that inflation is coming down, but interest rates are expected to continue rising, and this could possibly show indications of a global recession. What would you say?
Yes, and yes again. The fact is that growth has remained stronger than we had expected for all sorts of reasons. You'll have to forgive me if I'm not in the center of the picture. I'm trying to work out where the center is in the bright sunshine. Ah, that looks better. We are slowing down. Inflation is slowing down, but the rate of interest has gone up so fast, 400 basis points plus in the United States. The miracle is that it hasn't tipped the whole thing over the cliff. So that shows an underlying resilience in major economies, which is why, because inflation hasn't fallen as far and as fast as they might have hoped, there's more work to be done. Jay Powell said it this week. There will be more interest rate rises in the US, UK, and EU. Where that leaves South Africa, of course, is in an interesting position, as with all emerging economies where the currency can be affected by things. But you've got gold. There are various reasons to suggest it won't be as bad as elsewhere, except, Heidi, I hate to keep coming back to it, load shedding. If you're going to lose up to 2% of GDP at a time when already things are slowing down and the rest of the world is heading into a recession, slow growth, sclerotic growth, stagflation, choose your adjective, then South Africa is going to feel the effect of that and will be less equipped. I didn't say ill-equipped, but less equipped to manage those consequences.
Certainly, and if we can just get out of the slump of power cuts, I mean, it's truly, it's really frustrating. But on a lighter note, I want to ask you about your BFF, yes. Brody. Apparently you have a new best friend. Our team is going to bring up that beautiful picture with your new BFF. Tell us about him.
Here, of course, in Cape Town, you can ride a sidecar. And with the sidecar, if you're lucky, you get Brody, who sits in the back. And Brody, being the affectionate beast that he is, will suddenly put his head on your shoulder. Now, if you've been like me and foolish enough to eat biltong on your journey, magnificent biltong. Oh, you know, if I could take biltong home with me, I'd fill my suitcase up to the brim with it and leave my dirty undies behind, but I can't. But Brody will then lick your face and lick off all the biltong. It really is quite sweet. And that's, of course, you're worried about that sort of thing. Look, you know, I will say one thing. Well, I've said lots of things, probably. I can feel some of your dear viewers probably seething. Some of them are probably throwing things at the television, saying, what does he know? Why does he come here and tell us all this? Who does he think he is? I get it. I understand that. But sometimes the truth, albeit harsh, can be an awakening. But let me just show you as we finish here. Hang on, I'm getting old. I can't get out of the deck chair as well as I used to. Oh, look at this.
It's okay, we'll give you some time.
I understand that no matter how difficult the load sharing, on a Friday night, what more could you want on a Friday night? What more could you want than some dear friends who you've never met before, who are all going to have a...
Yes.
Of course, they haven't offered me a drink yet.
Yeah.
And they haven't offered me even... Smoked beef. Smoked beef, but there's no biltong.
Yeah.
A Friday night on the beach in Camps Bay.
Yes.
A good life.
Oh, lovely. I have one last question, though, Richard. Exactly 10 years ago, you interviewed a lady by the name of Eleni Jokos here on eNCA, and I'm wondering how she's doing.
Well, I said to Eleni back then, when we were in the studio, I said, you're never going to go far. Your career's going to come to a brisk end. You might be lucky and you might get to read the racetrack results on a regional station somewhere. And then she turned up at CNN and I had to eat my words. Eleni is a wonderful colleague, a true spectacular broadcaster, and I believe that it runs in the family, and I'm looking forward to you joining us back.
Thank you so much for your time, Richard. We really do appreciate it, and have the best time in Cape Town. And hopefully, when you come back to South Africa, there will be no power cuts. Hopefully, we cross our fingers. Have the best time. That was CNN anchor Richard Quest.